Hi everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, so I got a confirmation that you can all hear me. So for everyone, my name is Iris Nyawira. I am the marketing fellow at Elevate HR, and I'll be taking you through the intro of today's webinar. So today's webinar title is Contracts, Data, and Consent, the HR compliance in the age of AI. And with this topic, we have, most of us, if not all of us, have been seeing how AI is transforming the modern workplace. And through this, some key questions definitely emerge. Questions like, how do we manage consent? How do we manage employee data and privacy? How do we ensure that we're compliant in this modern era of AI? And so we'll be diving right into the legal, the HR, and the tech perspectives that are shaping this conversation. So for all of you joining us for the first time, I'd like to give you a brief on Elevate HR. And Elevate HR is a people-first HR tech and consulting company that aims at building smart, scalable, and human-centered solutions in the modern workplace. And so, so we aim to build smart, scalable, and human-centered systems for the modern workplace. And through our tools, through our consulting services, through our community programs, our goal is usually simple, and the goal is to ensure that organizations are putting people at the center of the workforce. So that's what we'll be getting into today. And let me briefly mention that we have a HR community that is constantly onboarding and taking new members who are willing to learn, network, and upskill. And if you're looking to join the community, the link is going to be posted in the chat, and all of you are welcome. So I would like for people to quickly let me know where you're joining from, so I can see the range of diverse people that we have in the call. You can just mention quickly in the chat where you're joining from. Okay, so I see Mushiri is joining from Nairobi. Emmanuel is joining from Nairobi. Anyone else from an unmentioned place, maybe? Okay, Westlands, Nairobi as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and assume that most of us is Nairobi. Okay, great. So, okay, I see people are still answering, but it's still Nairobi. Why actually Nairobi? Okay, so we'll start by introducing our lovely moderator for the day. And so guiding us through today's conversation is the incredible moderator, her name is Mbithi, and she's a certified HR professional and people systems strategist with deep experience at the intersection of culture, compliance, and technology. Mili, karibu sana. Thank you for being here with us today. Unmute kindly. Okay.
Thanks, Iris. So my name is Mbithi, and I'll be your moderator today. So as AI becomes thrives in the world of work, today we'll be asking the tough questions around AI and the world of work, just to understand how companies are equipped legally, ethically, and culturally to protect people, and also in the fast evolving reality. So today we are joined by other speakers. We have Dorcas Njuguna, we have Meshack Masibo, and Alfred Ongere. So I'll give each 2 minutes to briefly introduce themselves. We start with Dorcas.
Thank you very much, Millie. I really appreciate being here. much recognition to what the work, or basically the work Elevate HR does. I belong to the community, and I would say it's really great. So I'm a human resource profession. I focus in supporting organizations by working with business owners to give them solutions in a holistic manner in terms of HR, the full cycle. When it comes to recruitment, I'm also a consultant in terms of facilitating different programs. One is Lean In. I'm the founder of Women in HR, where we've supported 2,500 members. I'm also a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker, and trainer, and an Ikigai coach. Happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Next, Meshack. Thanks, Dorcas. Meshack.
Okay, my name is Meshack Masibo. I'm also a lawyer and an advocate of the High Court, and I also run a law firm within Nairobi, and I'm happy to be part of this conversation and to also learn as you also share and exchange knowledge on this very interesting and relevant topic.
Okay, thanks, Meshack. Next, Alfred.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alfred Ongere. I'm the founder and CEO of AI Kenya, Artificial Intelligence Kenya, which is a company that has been committed to growing the adoption of artificial intelligence in Kenya since 2017. I am also a technology consultant, having worked with different organizations in the telecoms and fintech sector. So I'm excited and looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
So thanks, guys. So we'll start looking at AI from a nature perspective. We'll start with Dorcas Njuguna. So Dorcas, you've spent so many years designing people, systems, culture, and framework. So in a tech-driven era, how should HR leaders rethink contract, the consent around AI in our processes, and also the employee experience?
Thank you for the question. I think one of the things I would say, and I think Alfred will attest to it, is first, AI is changing in a very rapid manner. So when you're thinking about work and contracts, one of the things that comes into play is our Employment Act is not up to date with what's happening in the AI space. However, we do have the Data Protection Act where it comes in to facilitate some of these things. So when it comes to transparency, there are things I would say 101% we are at par because of what it indicates. And if you think about, so I'll try pick one section which I need to read, because I mean, if it was Masibo, he'll just say it out of his head. But Data Protection Act for 2019 talks about establishing the processing of personal data. When you go back to the Employment Act, it actually talks about the same, but in a different narrative, where it says there are certain things that need to be in a contract. And they give us the basic, but you'll discover sometimes if we do not come out clear as HR professions, where we come out and say, this particular data we are collecting because of the type of organization we're in or the industry we're in, then that's where you come and find yourself breaching in it. So you'll find there is the basic information that you'll have, but you have to come and coin it in a way where it says, you know what, Millie, you're coming to this organization and we will need additional historical data like medical history and all that. However, in the data protection, it's very, very clear that certain information you have to get consent on how you use it. So I can still get your age, I can get your gender, I can get everything, but how I use that data would really matter. So one of the things I would say is there is accessibility on how new employees or organization are sharing the information to people, but the applicability is where I would say it's not one fits the box. I think there are a lot of changes that are happening that we would have to come and think on. How do we come and incorporate? And one of the things I've learned, especially now in consultancy, that you need to have a continuous awareness process where you are fully aware of what you're doing with the data and what is being put in some of these contracts, because failure to it, you'll find yourself asking the wrong questions or having certain statements in your data in terms of contracts that would limit you in having, I would say, a good conducive working environment. And one of them usually for us women is, when you're asked, are you pregnant? invading my privacy, but at the same time, certain chemicals that might affect in your pregnancy. So there's that part where you should be able to indicate allowable information to be given by the person. For instance, if you go to a supermarket, you sort of come out and you say, you can pick the item you want, but if you go into a restaurant, you sort of declare, this is what I want. So if something goes wrong from the meal you ordered, you're the one who sort of indicated what you want. What you forgot to mention was, can you give me the full detailing that is there? So I think those small aspects are the ones we are hoping to achieve in getting maybe a revised Employment Act. And if not, we lean on to the Data Privacy Act.
Just to shed more light on it, from where you stand, do you feel that today's HR policies are so equipped to like address how employee data is collected and how we use AI?
So I'll say not yet. Just as I mentioned, the speed at which we're getting a change is not the same speed we're in. So 2 examples I'll give. In most of the organization, you'll find them literally taking a copy of what is in the Employment Act and trying to translate it into a policy without fully being aware of some of the changes that are happening in the environment. So one of them that I would say that is usually, it keeps you carrying. I'll go back to just your basic information. When you have your policy and you're building up, you need to predetermine in that policy, why are we creating this policy? After you create that policy, you have to there has to be a focus group where you come back and say, this is the policy we're creating, this is how it's going to be utilized, so that you get feedback. I feel some of these policies were done maybe 10, 20 years ago, and even that has been revised might be revised, unfortunately, just to protect the organization, but not necessarily to protect the interest of the employees. So I would say we're not yet there, but I am happy. I have seen organizations who will come and say, in their policy guideline, you need to revise each policy at least every 2 years. So the goal here is, what guidelines have you put? What's the right governing structure in running that organization, especially when it comes to documentation? I know we do have a body that helps or equips people in managing their data. So some of these things, they're out there, but it just depends on you as an individual or a profession. How compliant are you with the everyday, I would say, activities that are happening globally and not locally? Because we may not be doing it as Kenyans in terms of adequately revising all our policies every 2 years or maybe a year. But think about passwords. You can't have the same password since you were born. It's supposed to expire at least in 90 days. I feel policies should reach a point where we revise every 90 days, because there's always a change happening in the environment.
Okay, my other question will be, with the rise of AI, I think it has like an impact on culture, the work culture. So how do we rebuild the culture when people feel like watched or reduced to data points?
So let me give a funny example of work. Just the other day, my son was trying to predetermine which book he's going to read, and like how he should just plan his whole career as much as he's very young. And he kept referring to, what, I checked with ChatGPT and it told me this is what I should be reading if I want to be this great leader in future. And half of the time, 3 sentences started with AI is guiding me on this. When you think about cultures, one of the things is it stems first on your values and what you've embedded in the organization. I know most of the time we always like saying, what, the fish rots from the head, and therefore the leadership team would be the one to carry the culture. And I would say yes, but the foundation begins with people. How the leadership has structured it will actually be able to lead the narrative, because if I'm going to invite maybe an employee and say this is an opportunity to be able to give feedback, what are we allowing ourselves to accept? What are the non-negotiables that we have put in place when it comes to work culture and what you can go for? When you're talking about culture is about trust. it's all about values. If I come into this session and I decide I'm just, going to downplay or not really give actual facts, it stems from who I am. It doesn't stem from anything else. And if it's tolerated, then it stems also from the other party. So for me, it's the foundation. And we will always say it sticks to the leaders because those are the people who would be questionable. But I feel it starts from scratch. I like the example we have always had about NASA when the cleaner was found in the corridor, and they were like, you're being asked, what do you do here? And they said, they're sending someone to the moon, sending a man to the moon. Whether it was the actual statement or not, that sold it for me, because I would rather have the cleaner person understand the whole process than even the head. Because let me tell you, the people who rule these organizations don't wear suits. They don't stay in offices, and they do a lot of work. And most of the time, it's the people who I always say they're never seen. And therefore, they're assumed, and you'd think it doesn't carry from there. So for me, yes, culture would equate to trust, but it all falls down into a value system. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question goes to Meshack. So Meshack, AI introduces a layer of complexity in the world of work. So how do we uphold employee rights, data protection, and compliance when decision-making is increasingly automated?
Okay, I think that's a very interesting question. I think it's something also that we need to continuously think about, because also AI has a lot of evolution that it's undertaking. I think Alfred will speak to that at a deeper level. So I'd say in terms of the legal compliance elements and how we're able to respond to some of those things, it's being able to be aware first of what the law says about a majority of these things in the HR context. So as Dorcas had mentioned, there is an Employment Act, which is again does not speak directly to artificial intelligence as such, but you can imply certain things from the act by just reading it. But the key law and legislation that touches on, or rather speaks to artificial intelligence and how that data is being processed and what not, is the Data Protection Act. And the key section, there is a section, I think section 35, that talks about automated decision making, that I think is really relevant to this particular conversation when it comes to either recruitment, or you are even doing performance appraisals, or deciding whether you're keeping someone on, or terminating the employment, or all that. So the key law is that section, the Data Protection Act. And what it says in essence is you are allowed to use AI, use automated decision making in terms of evaluating employees, recruiting, and whatnot. But the key thing is you need to be transparent. So if you're doing it, how you do it, you need to be transparent to the employee. If their promotion or demotion is going to be based off of how an algorithm weighs their performance across different metrics, you need to be clear about that when the decision is being made by both the AI and an individual. You need to be clear about that. But if it's being made as well by AI itself, or rather by the algorithm that you're deploying, then the person usually has a right to be able to challenge that. And when they challenge that, it means that the decision, either you need to reverse that decision or allow the decision to be remade by both a human agent. So there's that need to have a human agent in the decision-making process when you're using automated decision-making. So that's a critical element, and a critical way that also a lot of what we do needs to shift to align with that aspect of the law and what that law talks about. And also the fact that the rest of the rights, when you have every single data subject, which basically means everyone, has a certain set of rights. For example, the rights to have your information, or rather the right to understand how your information is being processed, the right to say I want my information to be erased and whatnot. So if it's an employer, maybe they've left the context of employment, so they also have a right to request that the information that is being held within their system is erased, and in that context. Then now beyond that as well, there are also a variety of rights that the employees have, but then another employee or the data subject has. But beyond that as well, whenever you're deploying any kind of AI solution in the context of HR, it needs to always connect to the data protection principles. So there are key principles that touch on data protection. So I've mentioned transparency. There's something else called data minimization. So you need to only collect as much information as you need. In the context of now, let's say recruitment, you only collect what you need and not collect beyond that. Then also store it for just the period that you need to have it. Then also be transparent about what you're doing with it and how you're processing it and all those contexts. So I think what the key is now being in touch with some of those key things, which I've also just said in summary, and now being able to embed them in how you deploy your tools and how you also performing your HR functions in today's context. So that's, I think, what I'd want to share for that. Yeah.
Okay, an interesting question for you, Meshack, maybe. Just shed light on this. Who like owns the liability when like an AI tool makes an unfair or non-compliant HR decision?
Okay, ideally, so that it's also a very legally, it's a big question because it has a lot of layers to it and different ways to look at it. Primarily, when it comes to any relationship between the employer and the employee, it's not usually an equal relationship. And how the law works, generally, it says where there is a, let me not bore you with the Latin, but there is a principle that says where there are two unequal parties, and there's any kind of dispute, usually the liability now falls on the party that has power, in a sense, the more powerful party. And in the context of AI, AI doesn't have a life of its own. AI is deployed by someone. So the person who is deploying the AI is the person who has the responsibility. Of course, to another extent, again, there's a layer to which you can see if the machine itself is faulty. You can also, there's an extent of liability to the persons who created the machine. But in the context of the employer and employee relationship, the buck stops with the employer. So the employer is the one who has ultimate liability, and then for them, they can also now go and also try and apportion some of that liability to the manufacturer of the AI that they're deploying. But in that context, it's the employer.
Okay. My last question to you would be, do you feel like employers are required to like inform every staff on AI, any changes on AI, whenever they are hiring or doing performance processes?
Yes, actually, no, that's the key. That's actually the one legal rule that's really clear from the law, that you actually need to inform someone. If during recruitment you're using AI to sift and decide who's going to the next stage, that needs to be clear as part of clear in the documentation of the job description and whatnot and the advert. If you're using it to determine who's being promoted or demoted, you also need to be clear. And what the law says, the reason for you to be clear is that the person should have an opportunity to challenge it, because AI has some of it can make an error and something like that. So you need to be clear about it at all levels, that you're deploying this particular technology and you're using it to sift this information and whatnot, so that someone can also question it and also can also question the data set that you're using to come to that conclusion. Yeah, so it's actually compulsory that you need to be clear about it, and not being clear about it can lead to fines. The employee can sue you for violating the act. You can be fined hefty fines, and you can also get penalties for your directors and the people within the company, the management. Yeah.
Okay. My next question goes to Alfred. So you're deep in the world of building and scaling intelligent systems. But as we bring AI into the human space of work, what design principles and boundaries should guide us?
Thank you, Millie, for that question. I would start by saying AI in HR must protect human dignity as the first leading principle. So I'll share more principles with some examples. So another principle will be transparency and explainability. So at the end of the day, whichever AI system that the HR is using, they have to make sure that the system is able to explain how it reaches or some decisions. And by extension, the HR should explain to the end user on the other side in terms of how the final decision was reached. So you have an option of customizing, different rules into the AI tool that would fit your organization. So you would need to explain that to all the end users that interface with the system. The other principle I would say would be fairness and bias mitigation. AI should reduce inequality as much as possible. It should not be used to scale that. So in this particular step, we should not deploy models that have not undergone bias audits and representative training data. As the HR or as the organization is sourcing for different software to use, this is one of the qualities that should be checked. An example here would be if you're using a resume screening AI, it should be checked to ensure that it's not favoring, let's say, certain university credentials over relevant experience. So here in Kenya, you might find that there's a bias towards, let's say, recruiting candidates from, let's say, Strathmore, UON, or JKUAT, just by the mere fact that because of their educational background. And these are roles that can now be transferred to the system, which, if not checked and if sort of applied on a wide scale, will introduce so much inequality. The other thing would be consent and data minimization, which I think Meshack has already mentioned this, that the consent should be informed, revocable, and very specific. So, for example, if you're using AI to monitor employee productivity based on the software that employees are using, they must know that they're being monitored, that they're being tracked, and how that data is used to make decisions. The other one would be accountability and oversight. I think Meshack has already spoken into this in terms of who takes the ownership when an AI system makes a mistake. And I would say at the end of the day, it's the key user that is introducing the AI tool before now you get to the vendor. So the responsibility in this case would start with the HR, and the query would be, okay, did you do proper checks to make sure that this AI tool is working in the right way? And then, the HR can transfer that responsibility, let's say, to the IT team, and then the IT team will sort of transfer that responsibility to the vendor. But at the end of the day, I would say the responsibility always falls with the key user that is introducing the solution to the end user. The other thing, of course, would be human in the loop, and this is very important. Irrespective of which AI tool an organization undertakes, a human has to be in the loop in terms of making the final decision. Thank you.
Okay. My next question is to you, Alfred. Is it truly possible to create a bias-free AI in the workplace?
I would say that bias-free AI does not really exist. At the end of the day, AI is fed on data, and most of this data reflects human bias. So no vendor should lie to you at the end of the day that their AI system is bias free, because the training data that has been used has different perspectives from a certain group of people, which, if not well balanced, at the end of the day will be biased. So we should just be honest and come to that reality that at the end of the day we can't get a truly biased AI, truly free bias AI.
Okay.
Millie, let me just jump on that.
Okay.
I totally agree with what he's saying, because if you have looked at how, I would say, even cooking works, someone's recipe will always be very different. But ideally, when you think about the research that has been done under bias, there's a lady by the name Joy Bolumwani who did a research and actually did a TED talk on it. And it's called the Gender Shade Study, where it was very, very clear that, yes, you can come up with these great solutions out there, but because of the person who made the solution, there was an automatic gender bias, that there's certain things that were not put into play. And some of these things, I think we can't run away from, but it's one of those things you now come and say you're using this solution, but with a pinch of salt, knowing what might happen in the event that you are assuming it won't have any biases. Over to you, Millie.
Okay. Alfred, what are the technical safeguards that should be in place before any AI tool is used on people data?
So for the technical guardrails, I would say fundamentally, if you don't have the baseline common technical guardrails, then it becomes very hard for you to implement or or talk about AI guardrails. So the same guardrails that fall under cybersecurity for organizations are the same that would apply to AI. So guardrails such as anonymization of data to protect the identities of different people. Then there's access control and encryption to ensure that only the right people who are supposed to access the data and the people who have the right sort of level of access are able to access that data. The other thing would be ensuring constant auditing and having logs of this auditing to track when was the system accessed and how the system is making different decisions. Then finally, you need to do continuous monitoring to ensure that you are reducing discriminatory outcomes in the software.
Okay. My last question to you will be, what role do you feel HR should play in testing or flagging ethical concerns in AI tools before they are adopted? And Dorcas, you can feel free to jump into this as it touches on HR and also the tech part.
So I would say that HR need to be involved in the procurement process and in the process of collecting the requirements of the system that they're going to use in the organization. So if the system is being built, they need to be involved from the onset in terms of collecting the requirements, and also they need to test the different AI tools in a test environment before they deploy it widely in the organization. So they're not only the end users of the systems as they're using them to run the organization, but they should shape the decision as active stakeholders in terms of which tool is going to be used.
I think just to add on that,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I think just to add on that, what I appreciate, and I like how Alfred has just indicated the safe environment. I appreciate that the fact that there are quite a number of solutions that have been put in place where they have the demo and when you go to live. But one of the things I really like, especially solutions made for HR profession, is that you get a good window period of utilization. Now, the big ask is, are we involving the right people? Well, we are saying we are testing in that safe environment. When you do not involve the right people, especially the end users, what tends to happen is, again, what we're saying the AI has, we would have our own bias on how the system works. And therefore, you'd end up actually failing at it. I like giving an examples. And one example I was given by one MD, actually a board member, told me, if you're getting this performance review document system, please go test it. And it's unfortunate because you always tend to know these people. Go test it in the slowest person you have. Not slowest in terms of they are not good at what they do. They take time. They are not very fast. They are not, there's somebody you'll give a smartphone and they will figure everything out. Well, we give our parents and they're still figuring out. So give that person who will still figure out. If they're able to achieve the full way, the full timeline you want, that's the system. Okay. And I'm not saying in a blanket phase, but think about it. We have diverse teams who are supposed to use these systems. Even the clocking in, there are times even you tell someone they're supposed to wave, they come there and they wave the backside of their hand and they're like, but I waved, So how simplification has been done in utilization of this system matters most on the end user. And then how you get that data and you analyze matters, because it's not just about utilization and the demos you'll do in a safe environment. It's analyzing and asking yourself, 5 years from now, will we actually still need this solution, or we will need to upgrade again? And what will that cost? And most of the time, we tend to throw that back to the tech person and say, you should have said this thing needed upgrade or what. If you don't understand those small intricacies, you should not be part of that community. But also, this is where collaborative environments are important, where you cannot go and get a system without your tech team involved. And even when you do not have, right now we have consultants who come in and actually just come, help you get the system, and then they're out of it. So it's not that we do not have the resources, we just lack to, we assume a lot that we do not require involvement of other people. And most of the time we think they'll access the data we need. If you're assessing something, even a payroll system, just use dummy data. Don't use your actual, and it should be very, very doable. And also where we have things to do with secrets and all these formulas, the biggest question here is, what is that you can replace that formula with to achieve what you're trying to do? And once you have done, then you can get the solution offering. And most important, do not forget Team Masibo, because if you don't have a lawyer in place, again, you may find yourself in court because you do not know how you're using the data, or if not the data, how is it manipulating the decision making? An example I'll give you, Millie, every now and then, like today, if I keep on saying AI this, what's the best solution? My phone will show me that result. It will keep showing me that. Ads will come on that. I have subscribed to things I do not know. Why? Because we have Google, Hello Google on the store everywhere. And therefore, there's so much information that is trickling there that is making a decision on behalf of us human unknowingly. And that's why sometimes it's good to create other parameters that you would measure with before even picking that solution offering. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, final one to Meshack and Alfred. Do you think tech is moving faster than regulation on purpose? And what are some of the dangers that are tied to this?
I'll
We
let
can start with Meshack.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of the pace of it, yeah, obviously, or rather, oftentimes, innovation usually goes a bit faster than regulation, and regulation usually reacts. Because ideally, see how we appreciate laws, as I'm a lawyer, and I know we usually appreciate laws based on what you observe of society, but you don't think about laws in a proactive sense. You don't think about things that will occur in future. We think about things that have already occurred, particularly in Kenya as a jurisdiction. So maybe it's something to be changed, but that now it usually comes from the point of there's an innovation and then there's regulation. It's a quick example of that is even M-Pesa. M-Pesa was first innovated before it was regulated. Then after M-Pesa came in is when the central bank said, we now need to regulate you as a payments company and whatnot. So ideally, it's a fault of our legal system, which I admit, but definitely that's the scenario. But hopefully in future, maybe that it will change. Maybe we'll have a more proactive approach and more proactive, but that's in an ideal setup. That's the realistic setup, is that law usually just follows regulation. Sometimes it even holds it back, but we're hoping and trying to push that it stops being that. It does not, even if when it catches up, it doesn't pull it back.
Alfred?
Yes, so maybe just to add on what Meshack has said, I would say that yes, technology is moving way faster than regulation, but depending on the region where you are in, the baseline, most of the baseline regulations that are there already protect us against the outcomes of the technology. So what regulation is getting wrong at this particular moment is trying to regulate the process of making the technology as opposed to focusing on the outcome. So an example that I always like to give is self-driving cars. So today, if you want to launch self-driving cars in Kenya, you would go and look at the laws from NTSA in terms of what does it define in terms of when it comes to the responsibility of a vehicle being driven, and what does it say about automated decision making and so on. So at the end of the day, especially for organizations, we now need to rely on self-regulation as we wait for the overarching regulations to be updated to sort of keep up with all the rapid innovation that is ongoing.
Okay. Thanks. So next to our audience, anyone that has a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself, ask, or type into the chat. So my quick fire questions, anyone from the panel can respond to as we wait for the questions on the chat. What's a bigger risk right now, bad AI or uninformed HR teams using it?
Alfred, go ahead.
Okay, I would say uninformed HR is a way of a bigger problem as opposed to bad AI, because if the HR is not well informed, then they can't spot the bad HR, and they can't spot the bad AI and sort of reduce the risk of all the bad things that it's doing. So at the end of the day, it's critical to ensure that the HR in the different organizations stay up to date to know that currently almost everyone is using LLMs to customize their resumes. So you need to rethink how you assess candidates for interviews and how you shortlist. Yeah.
Dorcas, you want to say something?
I want to echo first what Alfred said. Definitely, when you are more informed, you're more aware. But one of the things I've come to appreciate is over time, the experience builds up and it becomes your strength. I like how he has mentioned about CVs being redone, but there are ways we have realized even before AI, we could, almost tell who is lying and who is not. And this is where now you go back to, human psychology, understanding the human beings and how they work and how they deliver their conversation. It is said sometimes when you touch your left eye and you look maybe in a certain way that you are lying, and sometimes somebody would not know that. But being in HR, these are things you keep learning and improving that skill. So the more you are able to be full aware of that individual, the better. But of course, there's the bit of the challenge where it comes now. People are working remotely, and somebody keeps saying they're in the field doing their work, and they are literally in their bed. They just have their dog or something walking around with their machine, indicating they have gone I don't know where. So beyond the fact that that happens because you're in remote, there are other simpler ways in terms of where a HR can be more informed and still utilize the skills without necessarily fully utilizing AI as the benchmark. And even those who use it find it very hard to bypass it because half of the time, either you might not have the keywords and you have all the skills, and that's why you might need AI to support you to get to the door. But once you get to the door, you may not really be able to actualize it. Yeah.
So should AI ever be used to predict employee resignations or end performance?
Performance, data sort of tells you, but I think the one I would love is fast performance, because you can imagine when you have this great performer and then all of a sudden you lose them, they resign, and you're not fully aware on what went wrong. So you sort of want the preparation to it. It's a way of just simplifying some of these things. But then what does it mean? It means if you're able to figure out when this great performer is about to resign, you should be able to figure out from the same system why this non-performer is not performing, in order for you to enable them to perform. Because it might be just a simple thing as working environment or rotation of work that might need to happen, where somebody is not supposed to grow vertically, they're supposed to grow horizontally. And one of the things I've noticed, Millie, is when you not immediately, but most of the time it looks like that, you promote someone and then you're like, man, we promoted too early. Then you are like, where are these tools that can simplify the narrative of when this person should be ready. And even when they are identifying these great performers, how do you come back and prepare workable tools and trainings that can get them to where they need to be in the right order? Right now, we have assessments that enable us to know how to get there. I'm yet to see an AI do that, because if an AI does that, it literally means it is embedded in your system, either in your computer or laptop, and therefore it is just learning your behavior, the same way consumer behavior is done that might lead you to buying a Samsung or an iPhone. The same sequence can be used to tell us that Dorcas is about to resign. Yeah.
Okay. Who should be held accountable when an AI tool causes harm? Is it the vendor, the HR, or just the leadership?
Let me jump, because I know Masibo answered, so that I give a different perspective. I would look at it from two cases we have had. There was is it Sana or something, the guys who prepped the back end of AI. You'll notice the legal case that was put for them was actually in two fronts. It was to the client who was in US, who said, you have to watch these things and make sure you're able to clean out the mess that they don't want people to see, but also the organization that hired them. So you'll find the same different aspects where still, in a way, what Masibo said, whoever has the highest power would first be liable, but it doesn't mean the other person would not be liable. The leadership would be liable because, as a parent, again, stemming from me, I am the one who has introduced this gadget to my child. If this gadget is the one causing havoc, literally like now in my house, then it means I am liable of the consequences that are coming. And if therefore my child reaches 18 and decides is going to sue, or even not 18, sues me as a parent, or sues the gadget manufacturers that you made me addicted and this was wrong by putting the games in this, everyone would be liable. But think about it just in a work perspective. Not all organizations have AI. Not all organizations have been automated. There's some people who are still as basic as it was back then, and not even government. We're talking about private sector, So sometimes, even as you bring in that, you'll always have to ask yourself, what's the end result in terms of the harm? The same way we are told sugar might be sweet, but too much of it might still be poisonous. Yeah. Over to you, Masibo.
Yeah, I actually wanted to comment on the other bit just briefly, what you were talking about, the technology to be able to predict performance and whatnot. And I think because I have experience on both sides. I have clients who are employers and they're getting sued, and also I have clients who are suing the employer. So I wanted just to mention on the bit about the technology, and particularly on performance, I think it's really crucial when you're developing any kind of technology to have the input of the person that it will be used to weigh, in a sense. So you have their input and have it should be participatory in a sense, so that it doesn't also raise legal issues. So I know I'm a lawyer and I can see the many issues that can come up, and from both sides. You can say it was unfair, it was prepared without the input of the people that it was meant to weigh. So I think just when you're creating it, if you're deploying it, have the input of the person that is meant to be weighed by it, and then have a lot of different inputs, and even really fine tune it, because that's a potential Pandora's box. For me, I know it's a means for me to sue very many people. I think for you as an employer, it's also just really be careful with that bit of technology and how you're deploying it in terms of measuring performance and whatnot. Yeah. So I think in terms of the bit about the liability, I think I've already commented sufficiently, and I think I just echo I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
I think I agree with you, Masibo. One of the things I've noticed, having worked in an organization that had AI systems and one that didn't have, the issues that were arising, especially in employment acts, not employment act, but legal cases of work, were mainly because of the accessibility to data, that they were able to churn in more data to build up their case, unlike the person who was basically not accessing all that data. So I think in a way, sometimes we might see it like, yes, you can have all these people you can sue, but also remembering that the same systems that you have put in place are the ones simplifying them to build up the case. Because back in the day, rarely would people send contracts on email, rarely would you be told to co-sign. I remember there's somebody who was mentioning to me, simplicity on how we are just doing the virtual signatures. You decide to sign, and that's your official signature at the bank. And you're thinking you're cool, and somebody decides to take advantage. And I've seen that, especially where there's an interconnection where somebody is borrowing a loan from the bank, you have a signed off agreement in a company, and the staff just takes full control because signatures are just hanging somewhere in contracts. Yeah, over to you, Millie.
Okay, I'll read out the questions on the chat. I'll start with Brian's question. Should employees have the right to opt out of AI-powered tools in the workplace, like AI performance tracking systems or chatbot-driven HR support? And what would that mean for compliance?
I think let me start with this. I would say no. I can't remember the actual case, but there was a case where a bank had a contract that had been put in place, and the usual suspect. So you upload it on AI and everything. Remember, just as AI is told to search virtually inside for anything in terms of Google search and all, it would do the same for any data that it has in its memory. And the same contract ended up in their competitor, and they actually lost a huge contract because when they could not close this negotiation, the other party was trying to figure out how they can get another better bargain on this other side. So ideally for me, it's thinking about how well can that AI take full advantage of you. And in that sense, you're thinking about by introducing a chat box internally in a controlled environment, it would work 101%. Why? Because you're the one, I don't know if it's called a chat box, but you're the one feeding the information you'd want it to have. So I've seen that on a positive note where somebody or an organization has just pulled in and said, this is who we are. When you're stuck and confused about our policies, just chat on this thing and it will give you all the narrative to the policy and link you back to the policy. Now, what you've done there is you've just simplified. It's like you're using, is it Note LM something for Google, where it just reads the data and then creates a very good narrative for people to interact. And you can even almost do quizzes on it. Now, that's the good side of it. The flip side also, think about it, is the last time, I think there were salaries that were released in Kenya for some people, and it was just all because of what? Accessibility to AI tools. And also, the last time we had the fraudulent issue where an IT person stole from the SACCO body, it was just access to the data. And how you gain some of this access is either because you don't have tools and parameters locking someone from what point does Dorcas HR access this data in the organization, and then who else in other departments has that access, and then what is not accessible to everyone when they're outside the premises. Most of the time, people assume because I'm in cloud, I am safe. But even in that, I think Alfred can attest, those are the easiest points to access if you don't have a good security setting. Yes.
Thanks, Dorcas. So I'd like to hear Alfred's view on the same question.
On my end, from the technology, provider standpoint, and also having been on the other side, I would say at the end of the day, if you look at it from one perspective, where an organization has to operate at at different levels of efficiency, and now they introduce a certain tool which they explain very clearly to the workforce. This is how the tool is going to be used. This is the data it will collect, and this is why the organization needs to use it. So in that case, where it is well informed and it is strongly tied to the business objectives of the organization, in some cases, the employer might not give the employees the option of opting out, but in other cases, they will give a disclaimer to the employees who don't want to participate or use this particular tool because of certain reasons. So I would say there's no one straight answer, but at the end of the day, it should be informed consent at the end, in terms of the end user who is using the system. But also, if it is critical to the operations of the organization, then they might not also have a clause of letting the end users to opt out. Yeah. And then also from the other perspective, I think maybe it might also be, or it was only on workplace performance, but also if you look at it from the perspective of applicant tracking systems, at the end of the day, as the possible employee on the other side who is applying, you don't have much say if an organization discloses to you that because we are processing many applications, we will have to run your data through a system that will help us make some decisions in terms of whether we shortlist you or not. So just looking at both sides, I wouldn't say there's a straight answer for it. But as long as at the end of the day there's informed consent and very clear disclosure that this is how the solution works and this is why we need to use it.
Okay, maybe we can get a parting shot from each one of you as panelists. Short ones. We start with Dorcas.
Yeah, I had not prepared that parting shot. But anyway, so one of the things I would say is I think AI is here to enable us. How we go about it really matters, especially when it comes to work settings and as decision makers in our different workspaces. We need to ask ourselves the part we are playing. We might assume that AI is just a tool or a cost center or the coolest thing in the block, but just as the internet came and the wave was felt for a very long time, I feel AI has surpassed that, and we need to lean more in knowledge, because even when you think about the reports that are being given by the World Economic Forum, that data science and cybersecurity are going to be two of the highest skills sort of in any industry. It would mean that at the front of it is AI insights that is leading the narrative. So in my end, I am trying to be more aware on how I can use AI in a more simple, better way. I may not equip it in all aspects of our lives or even in our workspaces, but in the small doses that you do, ensure you're aware that AI is more of a machine that is learning you, and sometimes it might surpass you and you might be replacing yourself unknowingly. Thank you, Millie, for the opportunity.
Meshack, what's your parting shot? Yeah.
Okay, so I'd say maybe my parting shot will be the fact that I think when I think about AI, I remember there's a movie that used to, I think the series used to air some while back, used to call Night Rider, about a self-driving car. Okay, that might give away my age, but it's about a self-driving car and whatnot. So I say AI and all the aspects of automation that come with it are like that cars, and they're shiny, they're new, and they're really entertaining and exciting to think about. But it's still good to remember that even as you use that self-driving car, there are still rules. You need to obey the traffic lights and whatnot. To just say there are a lot of legal regulations that govern the use of AI. So no, it's shiny, it's exciting, but so that you don't get into trouble, it's good to also be aware of the different rules that regulate your operation and how it plays out here. So ride it well, but still be aware of the rules. And when it's time to stop, stop. When it's time to go, go. When it's time to pause, pause.
Alfred?
First, I would want to thank Elevate HR for inviting me to have this discussion. And to the message to all the HR in the room, please give applicants feedback whether they qualify for the position or not. I think one constant issue that most applicants have is in cases where they apply for jobs opportunities, but they don't get any feedback or any explanation why they're not being shortlisted. So please be fair and give that. And then my parting shot would also be that HR and anyone who is in the workforce needs to constantly update yourself on the trends in terms of the technologies that are coming out and how modern work is constantly changing. Personally, for us at AI Kenya, we have an executive workshop that is called Augmented Thinking, Leading with Confidence with Generative AI. And our next cohort is in 24th July. So if you go to the AI Kenya LinkedIn page or the AI Kenya website, you'll be able to find the workshop, just as a way of making sure that we update people on different skill set and different strategies to remain relevant in the modern age of AI. So thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Okay. This has been a very rich conversation. Thanks everyone that has joined. Let's keep building an ethical, people-first workplaces. So I'll hand back to Iris.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much, Mbithi, for guiding us through the conversation so smoothly. A very big thank you to our panel for attending and sharing their insights and enlightening us on this conversation. So for everyone who's enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, and I'm sure all of you have as well, you're very welcome to joining our community. The link is posted in the chat. We have more of such conversations. We have fireside chats, we have webinars, and we have masterclasses as well. As a matter of fact, we have a fireside chat and a webinar coming up very, very soon. So stay tuned on our socials and make sure to not miss out on any of them. And once again, thank you so much for attending. Have a good evening, guys. Bye.